Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest panel discussion here at the Transport Innovation Summit. I'm Luke, the editor of Intelligent Transport. I'll be moderating the discussion here with this panel brought to you by NMI as we discuss what comes next for payments in urban transport. Now, I'm joined here for this session by Kanan Keeney, Product Manager at NMI, Jeremy Aklam, Integrated and Smart Travel Director for Transport for the North, and Jaspal Singh, Senior Expert in IT and Development at UITP. Now, we have a couple of presentations to start things off, followed by a thorough panel discussion, answering any questions that you guys might have. So please do make sure you're getting your questions in using the questions tab on the chat in the event platform. But there's a lot we're going to get through here, and I'm looking forward to it. So Jaspal, over to you for the first presentation.
Thank you, Luke. I'll just share my screen. I hope you guys can see my screen. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I know people are joining from different parts of the world, and that's a new reality in today's modern time. We need to work 24 hours into 7. So I'm based in Toronto, working with UITP for the last 5 years. Before start, I just want to briefly share what UITP is. It's a global association. We are working with 1,800 members in 100 countries around the world, supporting the cause of advancing the public transit and trying to help and support the public transport network around the world. And with this pandemic, we all know how things are. When it started, and being a global organization, we see the early trends. We saw when things start happening in January in China, and we saw how it impacted the thing and economy and public transit there, and then it's starting spreading out to different parts of the world. We see how operators are facing this challenge. So at UITP, we are trying to follow up with the operator to see how things are. Some of the cities are still in the phase 1 of pandemic. Some of the cities are now seeing the second wave. Some of the cities are seeing much better times. So we hope in coming days, things will get better around the world. But just want to share this slide showcasing that how after the first restrictions were lifted, we know that all the cities were stopped. The public transport use went down to, somewhere to 0 because some of the city even stopped the public transit altogether. So after the first relaxation, we see there is some traction going on in public transit, but we can see even after so many weeks, even after 20-25 weeks, we still didn't see the level which we had pre-pandemic level. So the cities are still struggling. Even Shenzhen, which is completely out of now, this pandemic still recovering level is 65%. So it's a challenging time for public transit, and the ridership is too low. And other quite impact was some of the systems were very old. The public transit operator caught unaware. And this is one of the slides which is prepared by Worldline. We really like it because what it's showing, the old normal. It's not that the transport authorities were not doing digitalization. They were doing digitalization. We see with our member, they were implementing a lot of solutions. But what happens suddenly, there is this crisis happen. And when this crisis happened, to be honest, many cities shut down their ticketing system because it was not contactless. Many cities stopped collecting fares because they still need to depend on the cash with the driver and all. So what happened, when this pandemic happened, everything went down. But what we are seeing now, there is a new normal, and that new normal is, there are some players which now want to go ahead of the curve, and they are doing much more digitalization compared to what they were doing. The technology acceleration has gone very fast, and there are some operators which are still assuming that things will be back to normal, which we don't believe. We believe it's a new era now, and we need to get ready for that. And it's true for ticketing as well. For ticketing, we can see now cities are moving toward cashless society, the digital currency are becoming more prevalent, and the mobile solution. So any operator around the world which is working in public transit, they have to be aware that this pandemic not only impacted the public transit or public transport sector, it has a worldwide impact. And all part of our life, people are now more and more dependent on demand and delivery and using less cash. So it will definitely impact the public transit as well. So we need to accept this new reality. For ticketing, it's a long way. At UITP, we are 135-fold organization, so we know how the ticketing has evolved. So this is a very good graph which is prepared by Redingo, and it shows that how it started from just a coin collection and physical token, and now it's moved towards a complete pay-to-go solution or account-based ticketing, and be in, be out using mobile. So earlier, the operator used to face a challenge of setting up the tariff, but now they are facing up the challenge of which technology they should select, because there are so many options in the world nowadays. At UITP, we are publishing this report. Happy to launch, which is demystifying the ticketing and payment in public transit. We will try to show how different ticketing models are being adopted in different parts of the world. But I want to spend some time about what are the key trends we are seeing with our members over the period of time. And after this pandemic, we saw there is a big acceleration happen. And I purposely selected only 4 trends. The first is the adoption of contactless EVM technology, the open loop system. One of the data from Visa is that they saw the growth of 187%, in contactless payment around the world. And this graph clearly shows that how the growth before pandemic in January, February was in single digit. And it went down very badly in March and April because the public transport system was stopped across the globe. But after that, the kind of recovery it has seen. So this can clearly show the future belong to open loop, and city need to really think about that. There are new partnership emerging. All of us know about MTR Octopus system, which is quite nice, like London Oyster, which is comparable to that. But now they're also thinking about new partnership, and recently they partnered with Apple Pay, and now you can use Apple Pay to pay for your transit ticket. You can use NFC technology to pay at the station. So cities are adopting new choice, new partnership, and that's what are becoming like a new feature. We also see mobile ticketing. We know it's happening for quite some time, but now the new models are emerging. So basically, somebody said a simple mobile ticketing is nothing different than having a physical ticket, because in a way you're carrying a ticket in your mobile phone rather than carrying in a paper. So now there are new systems emerging like check-in, check-out, check-in and assisted check-out, and check-in and be out, and more. I mean, the premium system which is coming out is a be in, be out. You don't need to worry about when you are entering into a transit system. You don't need to validate anything. Your mobile phone will automatically translate the signal, validate, and once you move out, the geolocation will capture your point and deduct the fare according to your journey. So there are some pilot has been already started, but it has accelerated now. There is a lot of noise now for being paid out. Why even to take out your mobile phone from your pocket? You can just go inside a transit system, move out, and you are paid. Another important thing what we are going to see in future, and which is already a lot of trials has been started about the biometric ticketing, and biometric doesn't mean, like a lot of people get confused with, do I need to give my fingerprints or do I need to touch anything? But there are now new technology which are coming out where you can use your palm, you can use your eyes, you can use your face recognition, to validate the ticket. You don't need to show any device. You don't need to take out any paper. You just wave your hand in front of the ticketing machine. You just, smile in front of the ticketing machine, and the machine will open it up. So these are the new trends, what we are seeing in the ticketing and payment, and why these are important. It's not only, giving a contactless experience, it's also provide a seamless experience to people. At UITP, we are trying to work with our member to understand these new technology and try to understand that how, which one is the best. But to be honest, the answer is each city need to select which technology they want to go for it. But the only word of caution is that you need to think now for next 10 years, or I would say even longer, next 20, 25 years. So you need to select a ticketing system which is more futuristic and scalable and can be changed. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any question from you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jaspal. That's great. It's amazing to get your perspective on this, and also UITPs. And I think really interesting to see the types of technologies that are going to be coming in, as you kind of referenced on your last slide there, to change what contactless really means to this industry. We'll take some questions towards the end, but for now we have another presentation to bring you, and I'll pass over to Kanan.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Luke. I'll just share my screen quickly here. And put us into presentation mode. Okay, great. Hopefully that's working and everybody can hear me okay. So thanks a lot for joining our webinar today. I'm going to be giving my view on what comes next in urban transport. So my name's Kanan Keeney. I'm a product manager at NMI, and I'm responsible for managing our integrated payment devices, processor connections, compliance, and PCI P2P, among some other stuff. I've been working with the company for 5 years. Originally in sales as a pre-sales solutions consultant. And before that, I was working for Aspire Payments in certifications and technical account management. At NMI, I've worked closely with several different operators in helping to implement transit solutions across the globe. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with NMI, we're a payments enablement technology platform. We offer a wide range of solutions for our technology partners, including a variety of EMV card present and e-commerce SDKs, hundreds of shopping carts integrations, and a variety of other solutions for seamless payment acceptance. Our services power over $70 billion a year in payments. We work with 1,400 different partners who represent 140,000 different merchants. And we have almost 250,000 payment devices connected to our gateway, processing over 1 billion transactions a year via over 100 different processor connections. Now, thanks to NMI's wide range of payment enablement products, you can find NMI almost anywhere the card payments are being processed, from tier 1 retailers to citywide transportation systems and 10,000 things in between. NMI is truly a one-stop shop for payment enablement. So now looking at transportation, there are many exciting new developments emerging. There are things like driverless technology, electric vehicles, new ways of monetizing the curb, biometrics, identity management, and so on. But here at NMI, we believe the future is contactless. As you can see written here, MasterCard reported that contactless payments grew by 40% globally in the first quarter of this year. That's an incredible growth rate for contactless adoption worldwide. Further to just EMV contactless, however, we feel that the coronavirus has accelerated people's desire to have touch-free solutions in general. So this can translate into QR codes, paying by an app, pre-booking online, and so on. But before I talk about the future of transit, I'd like to look at the past. Now, about 100 years ago, rail transport wasn't all that different than it is today in many ways. Sure, there was a smaller range of tickets, just a single or a return, really. But what they had then, we now call a known fare system, or Model 1 architecture. Basically, you predefine the journey you want to take, and you pay in advance. And as time has moved on, we've changed how you can buy these known fare tickets. So you can still go up to a manned ticket window or buy it from an inspector on the train, or you can now buy it from a ticketing vending machine or get it through a mobile ticketing app and so on. Definitely fancier, maybe more effective, but still based on this old known fare method. And this is not to say that there's anything wrong with that. We at NMI provide payment solutions for all of these options. And some of the time, known fare is the simplest and frankly best option available. But I think that one of the most exciting innovations in transportation that's happened over the last couple decades has been the tap-on, tap-off concept, also commonly known as Model 2 transit architecture. So cities worldwide are rushing to replicate what was done here in the UK, in London, across the TfL network. Now, knowing that people from all over the world travel to London, using EMV contactless was a very clever way of unifying the system against a global standard that the majority of people already carry in their pocket. Another incredible benefit of tap-on, tap-off is there's no working out what fare you need to purchase. I've definitely found myself very confused in other countries trying to buy myself a train ticket or bus ticket or tram ticket or whatever, when presented with a language I don't understand and a fare system that doesn't make any sense to me. The idea that you can tap your way onto a bus with the faith that you'll be given the best value fare is a pretty incredible development. Unfortunately, this is a problem that I still experience even here at home in Bristol in the UK. I struggle to know how best to pay for my bus versus my train. Do I download the app? Do I go and pre-book online? I kind of wish I could get something more like the London Underground across multiple modes of transport with one charge at the end of the day. But this leads us on to the technical challenge. It might be easier to aggregate payments if everyone was using the same transport provider and same card reading devices, but we all know that's seldom the case. Instead, we find that different systems use different card readers, and each of those card readers create their own offline tokens, also known as card hashes of payment cards. And these tokens are what are being used in the back office systems to identify how many trips a cardholder has made in any given day. So every time I tap my contactless card onto the card reader, an offline token is generated. The token will be the same at the entrance and exit gates as long as the same reader type with the same encryption key is loaded. The token is the identifier used in the back office because it's non-sensitive data that cannot be used to perform a payment. And via these tokens, they can see I tapped an entrance gate in zone 1, an exit gate in zone 2, and so on across the network. And at the end of the day, they can figure out the best fare for me based on where I went. And now that's all well and good, but if this is all offline, then how do we keep people out and off of these modes of transport? Let's say someone rode around the network yesterday, and when you tried to charge them, you were hit by a decline from their bank. Using the token as an identifier, you can create a deny list. So this will reject cards offline based on the token that they generate. But the trouble with tokens is that every card reader manufacturer will have their own method of tokenizing the card. So if I tap on a card reader for manufacturer A, token 1234 is generated. But when I tap my card on a card reader for manufacturer B, token ABCD is generated. So now I'm back to square one with no easy way to work across different platforms. And of course, this also results in limitations on the operators. So if I had a fleet of buses, which consist of large double-deckers and smaller single-door versions and very small van transport types of vehicles, I would likely prefer to have different hardware in those buses to meet the specific requirements of the environment that they're in. But due to token requirements, I'm limited to one manufacturer and maybe one specific card reader device model. Now, having looked at this problem, I'm happy to announce that NMI has a solution. NMI created a service to provide transit back office solution providers with the equivalent card tokens for a card upon request. We'll perform a formal key exchange with your reader manufacturers of choice so that we can return all available tokens for the card you present us. So for example, presenting my card to the NMI system can return token 1, 2, 3, 4 and token ABCD and so on, enabling the back office to create an account for the card and manage both a shared aggregation model and a shared deny list. So for example, someone could tap onto a bus with one type of card reader on it today. Later on, let's say that card payment declines, you can deny them entry on a different bus with a different type of card reader tomorrow. And then if we keep pulling this thread, what else is interesting is that this could also be used for other environments to widen the scope of your transit system. So for example, a card could be loaded into a scooter application, sent up to NMI to have the token generation happen, and subsequently checked against the back office to ensure it's not on the deny list or to further aggregate that day's travel. Equally, this could be done using an attended card reader, where perhaps the card reader being used isn't functionally able to generate an offline token. So this could benefit buses for ticket sales or inspection on board and so on. So using NMI, a multimodal tap on, tap off aggregated transit model is fully possible. And this is where we think that the future lies, where I can tap onto buses, trams, trains, bikes, e-scooters, and any other public transport and get a simple final fare at the end of the day. And it's fully contactless, fully aggregated, and fully secure. The possibilities are endless. And that wraps up my presentation. So thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to answering your questions in a moment on the panel.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Kanan. It's a great presentation and fantastic to see some of the trends that you guys are seeing emerge at this time, as well as some of the potential solutions as well to the kind of new issues facing transport companies at this time. Now, it's great timing because we have plenty of time left for discussion, which is fantastic. I obviously have some questions of my own as well, because I can't help myself. So let's jump straight in. Jeremy, I'd like to come to you first, and obviously welcome to the panel. I know you weren't presenting, but welcome now. So it's a question for the whole panel, but I want to come to you first on this and just sort of say, you know, in terms of some of the changes that we might see in fare medium and payment method over the next, I don't know, it's difficult to put a time frame on it at the moment. Whether it's cash, smart cards, EMV, ABT, whatever it might be, even as Jasper was referring to, some kind of check-in and check-out or B-in, B-out system. How quickly do you think current fare payment methods are changing, and how much of that is driven by the pandemic situation that we're in?
I think they're changing quite quickly. So to be clear, in the transport for the North area in the UK, we're seeing a very significant uplift in the number of contactless, in the context of bank card payments. And of course, this is entirely to be expected. And so, I absolutely echo what what our other presenters have said, that is a likely short-term move. I think I'd like to also just raise a question as to whether that actually represents a longer-term situation, for instance, because one of the interesting side effects of using your bank card is the question of what happens to your identity. Is your identity being passed around, for instance, various parties in a multimodal solution? Do you have any certainty that your identity is secure as it goes around those locations, etc.? And it almost doesn't matter what your viewpoint is on that. You come to a point about saying, well, you shouldn't be using your identity in the first place. If you don't use your identity, then your identity is not a problem. And so this context of using a bank card, which is identified to you, I think is probably the one which we're going to see fade away. And that we'll actually move to a more pseudonymous type of identity where you're known to the people who need to know you, but you're not identifiable within a multimodal network. It's less of a problem if you're just going into a store or going onto a bus or a train service and you're paying for a single product, hey, it's not a big problem. But the moment you start saying, well, actually, how do we achieve these complex multimodal solutions? The future of identity is actually core to making that work. And even though we might think, as a sort of looking at it sort of saying, hey, well, it doesn't really matter anyway, does it? The moment that it does matter, it matters to everybody. And that will be a pivotal moment. So if we rather foolishly go into this question without dealing with identity, I think, we are potentially storing up a really big challenge. And so for me, the question of identity is what drives the future of payments in transport.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Kanan, I feel like you may have a point to raise off the back of Jeremy's comment, which, it's a great starting point.
Yeah, no, it's funny because, I mean, I totally agree with you, especially when we wind up looking more into biometrics and things like this. A lot of people see a lot of appeal in putting up facial recognition and these kind of entry methods that would be more account-based. That winds up definitely having an identity crisis, right? And also just a freedom of movement crisis a little bit. I think for me, at least with the kind of solution method that I outlined, the beauty there is that although you're using the card, the identifier has no way to figure out what that card was. So it's kind of a one-way hash that you could never get back to that identity. However, I get you that, maybe doing things in a different way using that card could be quite dangerous. Just opening that box and identity and how to best manage that.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating thing because obviously if you're paying with cash, that's not a problem, but increasingly operators and authorities are moving away from that, especially with the pandemic. We're looking at a whole new definition of what contactless is. People don't really want to move away from their own device if possible. It's something they're bringing out of their own wallet that's completely in their control. So it's a fascinating debate. I think on the other side of it as well, it's if operators and authorities don't go through that integration process, where does that leave them in terms of being able to generate revenue in the first instance if they're not moving with what is increasingly becoming their competition if you're looking at ride-hailing services or even new mobility services such as micromobility. Jasper, I don't know if you have anything to add here, but we do have a question for you. So bear with me 1 second.
I fully agree with both the speaker. Identity crisis is one of the key challenge, and we fully understand. And that's what we are also worried, the way digitalization is happening, because there is a push now. It's not a pull approach. It's not that authorities are spending time to figure out something. It's just a push. I mean, we saw many of the operators, they have to shut down their ticketing system. So they have to implement something quickly to restart. So it's a push, a big push, and there will be a lot of issue with the cybersecurity and those kind of challenges. And identity is a major crisis. People are not comfortable to share personal detail and all. But I think with this COVID, people are also understanding, with this contact tracing and identifying who is near you and who was, which is the place you visited. So tomorrow, if there is any infected case, probably they can alarm you and they can inform you. So it's a challenge, but I think this is a new reality. You have to create a balance between both the issues. But I think we need to accept that it's a new reality. And I mean, with contact tracing and all, it cannot happen if you don't know who is traveling with you, where were you during that time. So it's a difficult challenge.
Yeah, for sure it is. Just while we're with you, we've had a quick question coming from the audience, just asking what the title of the UITP publication you referenced in your presentation was, with the word demystifying in it.
Yeah, it's a demystifying of payment and ticketing in public transport. It's not published yet. It's in, it'll be launched very soon, and I'll happy to share the link, but it will be published in coming days. And that report contains a lot of examples from different parts of the world. Like I said, there is no good or bad technology. Each city need to pick up, based on, sometimes their internal organization strength, like if some of the cities say that we can directly jump to Vivo kind of a model, I would say it will be too ambitious, so you need to plan your methods and operation slowly and move up. So we'll share that link in coming days, but I thought it's happy to share, like we are working in this area.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. So another question now for the group. Eliminating cash in public transport systems always hits a barrier when it comes to providing payment methods for those that are unbanked or underbanked. And as we saw in one of our presentations yesterday, in the US, that amounts to millions of people. What solutions can be provided to cater to that crowd? Don't know, Kanan, you're nodding a lot, so let's head to you first.
It's a tricky one, and a lot of it would just be, opinion and theory, I guess. But I feel like closed loop solutions did a very good job of handling something like that. Like you can go and purchase a closed loop card with cash, top that up with cash. But for the operators, it means that they don't have to bother with cash handling, which has a huge amount of expense. And also, I mean, of course, coronavirus, top of mind. People are going, oh, I don't really want to be exchanging cash. So I guess that would be my reaction, would be maybe a closed loop system or some kind of prepaid card system, something like that.
Yeah, sure. Jeremy, I'll come to you next on that. I mean, presumably Transport for the North, that's not something that you're looking to phase out just yet.
Well, I think the question on phasing out fits very neatly with what is the alternative, because you can't phase that out until you've got an alternative, and so in that context, I think the question hides in some ways a number of aspects. One is the scenario where there is a concession, for instance, and it's actually the travel is being paid for by another agency, and in broad terms that is relatively easy to resolve, except there are always issues about saying, well, okay, but if value transfers from one to another, how do you know that value is actually being used for what it was intended to be used for? And again, this comes back to the question of identity, because if you are transacting as a particular identity in that sense, you got that confirmation as to where the money is coming from and what it may be used for. Whereas if you are anonymous at that particular point in time, then there's no guarantee on that at all. And so it's really back to the process of how do you want to deal with concessions? How do you want to allow people who are not using a concession and choose not to use the method of interaction, shall we say, that the majority of people use? To what extent do you then allow them to have a further opportunity? And I think that is best answered by looking at the conversion piece. So that there needs to be, as Kanan suggested, a way of converting one solution to another to allow people to actually transact. And in broad terms, it's not that difficult to understand. I mean, if you want to travel internationally, you have to have a passport in general terms, or an ID card if you're in a region like Schengen, for instance. There are certain norms in society that you can draw back to, and I think the question on the use of public transport without those who have a bank card is the question about, well, do we really need a bank card, or do we just need to know who is traveling and in a way that is not going to identify them? And to have a method of conversion. I think once you solve those problems, it actually becomes a solvable problem. And I think that's really where the public sector comes in, because it is not a solution that the private sector is willing to resolve, because it can't, frankly, make a profit at it. And so it's that is really where public and private sectors need to work very closely to come to a solution which is of benefit to both parties.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely agree. Jasper, I wonder if you are able to shed any light from a UITP perspective on how this trend is kind of affecting some of your members around the world.
No, it's. I think I agree with both Kanan and Jeremy. It's a big impact and sudden impact. Like a lot of transit system around the globe, they completely stop accepting cash. And they tell people that you can enter the system only with a smart card and all. And the problem with the smart card, you need to load some money in that, and not everybody can afford. And somebody, you are traveling, so you don't want to just spend money on buying multiple cards. I mean, I collect a lot of cards, so I have a lot of transit cards, but not everybody do that. So, so that's one of the challenge. And other important point, what you highlight about unbankable, there are large population in different part of geography, which are still not using banking. And also, even people have bank account, they are still very, they don't want to use their online transaction. A lot of people a lot of people say it's people who are senior, they don't want to use it, but I feel that's not true. Even some of the young people, they're not confident to use their card, their bank card. They feel like, oh, there can be risk, somebody can hack my card. So I think it's a challenge. And but at the same time, I think somewhere you need to give a push, and that's COVID has done, which is now pushing people to, there is no other way. You have to move forward. And I feel, if the transit agencies try to give multiple options to the user, don't restrict your model with one particular payment system. Try to give multiple options. People should be able to pay with their smartwatch. People should pay with their bank card. People should have, like what Kanan mentioned, you can buy a prepaid card, or you can have some other feature. So I think authority need to really think that they can't have a traditional model of just going with one ticketing system. In future, they have to really think that how they can make it more inclusive. And that's what we are seeing around the globe, especially in some of the country where the mobile payment system is quite prevalent, like the wallet in Asian region, that's what we saw, that now a lot of cities are using the mobile wallets to integrate with their payment system, and I think that's, in fact, I would say that that's the largest population in the world, the people holding a smartphone nowadays. So you have to penetrate that section. You can't say, because I can imagine that there will be large number of population which didn't have a bank account, but they still have a mobile phone, even if you go to a poorest country around the world, and the smartphone. The data is becoming more cheaper in the developing part compared to the developed part. If you go to Asia, Africa, the data is much cheaper. So I think the transit agency need to think from that point. Just don't restrict your ticketing system with one solution. You have to be more inclusive, do more partnership, and see how you can expand that base. And I still feel there will be some portion of people which will be left behind, and you need to really think how to do it. But I think with COVID, you have to push people to move into more digital space. And there are advantages with that. There are a lot of advantages with that, which transit agencies are struggling. I mean, I know it's good to accept cash, but what Kanan mentioned, what is the cost to maintain those cash? You need to spend money to collect the cash. You need to tell the driver to take care. You need to have separate machine. And then, there are a lot of under reporting and all those kind of stuff. So those leakage will be eliminated. as well as you will able to know all your customer. Just imagine if you know all your journey, where it start, where it end, how people travel, how many times they travel in a week. So I think we need to understand there are more advantages than disadvantages. I can fully understand there are challenges, but that's what we are seeing in transit agencies. They are now becoming more and more inclusive. More and more partnership are emerging, which is we are happy to see, because everybody become partner of public transit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, the bottom line here really is, people want simple payment methods to make public transport as accessible as possible for the biggest number of people. Having that in place, whether it's cash, EMV, whatever it is, that's always been crucial in getting people to adopt public transport as their primary mode of getting around, or even, the struggle is real, even as a secondary method of getting around. How do you guys think that the messaging around almost, digitalization doesn't mean complexity, but the opposite in a lot of cases? How can that messaging be pushed out by operators and authorities, as a marketing message almost, to combat this current struggle with lower passenger numbers and ridership?
I think summarizing the benefits of it better would definitely be a good step forward, right? So I think of digitalization. I think that potentially could show me, oh, you shouldn't take the 115 train, you should take the 125 train because there's less passengers, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe I should take a cab to a train station 5 minutes down the road. This kind of, well, again, back on identity, right? Of I'm now able to get more information about what's actually happening across the network. And the more people that play ball, the better that information will be. A little bit chicken and egg, because you have to somehow convince people to have faith in the thing getting better before it's better. But I feel like if people were presented with that kind of idea that by adopting digitalization, your bus will be on time more often, or you will get there on time more often and have a more pleasant travel experience. I feel like that's a big part of what consumers would really be interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that whole question of digitalization is really relevant, because you cannot context digitalization just into the transport industry, because what we're seeing is work is going through that process at this time. And so, for instance, we're not going to see, in general terms, an exact return to the old normal. And so, as Jaspal said, in his graphs and looking at the way that things have happened, the way forward is going to be quite different in the future years. And so the context of, if you like, digitizing what you got at the moment is not going to be enough. And so the question that Kenan said about, well, okay, do I go for a train from a different station? Do I do something else? That is the type of question that we're going to need to be able to answer in having information available. We're going to have to develop digital twins so that we can accurately say how transport is going to be operating over a region in any particular timescale. We're going to need to be inclusive of the things which currently are excluded because we take a monetary economy approach to transportation. In sense of, we limit ourselves to discounts and to things like congestion charges, and then we hope that eco-based objectives are met. We're going to have to be much more inclusive of those objectives. We're going to have to accept that ride sharing, for instance, an electric vehicle, is going to be part of a new context of public transport in the future. And so the old structures are not going to last, and probably they're not going to last much longer than about another 18 months or so before we see new transport structures, as very much hinted at in that UITP graph, emerge. And so I think this is going to be a very interesting time to see which sets of models win. And I think that's really, for me, the key thing which drives what we're thinking about in Transport for the North, which is how can every mode of transport be flexible going forwards? How can we get to a point where it doesn't take us months to adopt things like crowding data within our data streams? How can we react within days or weeks to changes in transport demand? Those are going to be the things which are going to differentiate in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you say, the nature of this sector is, it's kind of unrecognizable from a couple of years ago with the number of new mobility services that have emerged and the way that these are all becoming integrated and aggregated now. It's happening at a rate that nobody could really have predicted. So having to adapt those, I guess, in inverted commas, more traditional transport models is going to be crucial to the survival of this sector as well. I mean, away from talking just about payments and ticketing, it's absolutely huge. And while we're on multimodal transport, I have a question here. I'll bring to you, Kanan. Is aggregated multimodal transport usage taking off equally in the US and Europe from what you're seeing? And I'll come to Jasper on that as well. But Kanan, take it away.
Sure. No, it's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like the market is definitely more mature here. I mean, I feel like it kind of began here. However, it is taking off pretty quickly in the US now. And now that we're starting to see contactless cards getting issued, they're starting to put these systems in place. Quite a few cities are rushing to be the first, and it's kind of a gold rush out there at the moment. However, no, I mean, it's definitely more mature out here. Definitely. I mean, I think anything EMV card based, you'll tend to find that Europe's doing it a little before the US.
Yeah, sure. And Jasper, obviously you're based in North America, so it'd be great to get your input here.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and we need to really see from which perspective you're looking, because I would say Europe, Europe is more advanced in public transport system, whereas the US has more wide ride-hailing system, and the new innovations and all. So I would say in Europe, they earlier never felt a need to partnership and integrate with all, because I mean, you go to any good city, you find they have a good multimodal system. You don't need to. But now with this COVID, they understood like these partnerships are important. And I think in reverse, in US, it's happening now. The new ride-hailing players and all, they understood the importance of public transit, because they now understood that both need each other to survive. So in Europe, I think it's awakening for traditional player to understand the need for new, and in US it's reverse. In the new player now understand the need to keep survive the existing system, because they know they cannot manage that much of traffic, and also they get a lot of complementary trips and network with these trips. So I think it's important. One important point which I want to add on the previous comment is about, like you mentioned about how the digitalization, you're getting a lot of data. What we are seeing as a trend now, now transit agencies as a marketing message, they are looking how to reward the customer which are good, how to reward customer which are a good public transport user or using regularly, which is not possible earlier. When you have a faceless traveler, you can never reward those customers. So we are seeing now emergence of a lot of these loyalty scheme, loyalty program, JR East recently launched some kind of the payback program for the travelers and all. So I think with digitalization, which is possible, you can now reward your customer which are using it regularly, rather than And that's what Jeremy there are some customers who like to avail some benefit, and there are some customers who don't like to avail some benefit. But I think with digitalization, that's much easier. You can find out who's doing better, who's doing not that better, people who are taking preps during daytime or peak time, or during social time. So you can accordingly change things. So which is not possible without digitalization.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a question here that kind of takes this discussion and separates it slightly from the impact on customers. In an aggregated multimodal post-pay model, who in this kind of ecosystem carries the revenue risk if you kind of perceive there to be one, which I think a lot of people do? I don't know, who would like to tackle that initially?
I mean, I reckon that it would probably change with absolutely every city, and that's probably one of the more complicated things when you start thinking multimodal is how do I structure a fare, who gets paid what across different parts of, these different modes of transport. If I take a scooter to get to the train station to then get a bus out to a small town, who gets what? How does a day ticket get structured? And what if I don't have money? Who's paying for that? I mean, I know in an EMV world, a lot of this is covered by the card schemes themselves, as long as you kind of manage deny lists appropriately, so they kind of cover first rider risk and things like this. I mean, who knows how long that'll stick around? Of course, the schemes used to do a lot of coverage with contactless to get it adopted, and after a while they go, it's adopted now, the risk is on you. So we'll see, but no, difficult. I mean, you would kind of guess, I guess, that it would be on the I mean, a mixture of the card schemes, acquirers, and the operators.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, like you say, it's extremely complicated. It's a very complex kind of setup. Jeremy, like you touched on earlier on, the need to look at this now and try and settle some of that, I guess to some extent, misunderstanding, and settle some of the nerves around trying to take on projects like these. Now is the time to do it if we're going to move forward kind of and look to unify transport systems a bit more than we have done in the past.
Yes, and I think I think this is it is a very important question, but I do think it also has analogous situations elsewhere. So things like the growth of Klarna in the retail space. So it's almost like, well, the question might be, in a multimodal transport scenario, who is the retailer in that context? Is it a multiple set of people, organizations that are retailers? Is it the multimodal organizer itself? Is it a third-party agency? And I think we're seeing a degree of disaggregation in other industries. And, I think history tends to lead us to travel and transport sort of following those types of events, fairly shortly behind. So I think it will be a very interesting one to watch. And I think it's exactly that type of development that solves this problem, or perceived problem of what if we don't get paid. Well, if you solve that a slightly different way, it goes away.
Yeah, for sure. It might take some convincing for some people to get on board with it. I think it's an incredibly complex problem. Jasper, I'll come to you next on the same question.
So I think what at UITP and with our member, we always we feel that the risk should be equally divided among every player, and it should be a win-win. Otherwise the partnership will not be successful. For example, with this whole thing, we are seeing a lot of people are now implementing on-demand transport. A lot of cities are coming up with on-demand transport, And cities are not implementing on-demand transfer just purely to give more option to user, but also looking a way to reduce their cost. So many cities are now doing on-demand transportation partnership with other players because they want to reduce their cost of operations and bring cost reduction and more benefit for the corporation, not just because of giving one more kind of a service. Our ultimate goal is that. So if that is not leading to that aim, it make no sense for city to do for on-demand transfer, because if it's increasing your cost and not bringing the benefit to all the people, then it make no sense. Similarly, I feel for ticketing solution as well. The purpose for implementing the digitalization and the new ticketing method is that how you can reduce your cost of operation, cost of collecting the money. And I mean, in some city, you will be surprised. Some of the developing world, because they used to have a fare collector in the world, the cost of collecting the fare is more than the fare itself. So it's sometimes more than 100%. So it makes no sense for them to do it, but they have to do it because it's some way support the cash flow. But in developed part, also there is a cost associated with this ticketing method. You need to have a guy at the station to sell the ticket. You need to pay that cost and operate the system. So if the new technology is not bringing any cost benefit to the organization or operator, I don't think it makes any sense, to move forward to the new technology until unless it brings some efficiency or all. So at UITP, we see multi-model system or partnership with new mobility and players should always be creating some win-win for all the parties. If it's not creating win-win, sooner or later we'll see there'll be divorce, happening in these partnerships, which we don't want,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it must be a real challenge to try and approach someone like a new mobility, or whichever way around it is. If an authority is the one trying to launch a project and they're being approached by all kinds of micro mobility providers and new mobility providers to try and integrate with, there has to be something from the off, that it has to be something that they both have in common that I guess progresses this whole argument. Otherwise, it's never really going to get off the ground. We've got a few minutes left, and I just want to take a quick look at the poll that we've had running. So we asked the audience, what are the most important considerations when implementing new payment methods? And it is the highest three that we've had in terms of responses. 24% equally say it is security and data privacy, passenger adoption, and interoperability. Based on the discussion we've had here in the last half an hour, I don't think that's going to come as much of a surprise to any of you. But it'd be great to quickly just touch on those results and what it tells you about I guess how on board the audience is with this kind of discussion and how aware they already are of what faces them in moving forward. Kanan, I'll come to you first.
Cool. I mean, to me, that makes me really happy that those are the things that are top of mind for people. I think they're very important, and I think that they're all good points for adopting EMV as a solution as well. Is that you kind of go interoperability? Yeah, I mean, EMV is a global standard. That might be one of the best things about tap on, tap off, is a Visa card is a Visa card no matter where it's issued, right? In terms of data security, again, I mean, people that have been dealing with payments for 20 or more years, security is everything in payments. And yeah, I don't know, to me that kind of, if anything, it just kind of backs up the solution that I'm trying to, productize.
Yeah, right. That's a pretty neat bow around that, which is nice. Jeremy, we've got a couple of minutes left, so really quickly.
Yeah, just super quickly. These are some of the big issues, and they point, we think they point to that sort of mid-layer, between operators and consumers, between other transport actors and operators. And that's the space that we are about to explore and look much more closely in, because we think that is the layer which in which the solutions for these problems actually exist. So in other words, it's not a payment problem. It's not directly an identity problem. It is in the packaging in between. And that is where we think that the future actually resides in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. And Jaspal, I mean, maybe one line?
Yeah, so I would say people are looking for peace of mind, so you don't want to get worried if you go somewhere, what mode should I use, or should my card will be hacked, or should I need to have different cards? So people are just looking for peace of mind. When they travel, they won't want to juggle with different things when they travel. So I would summarize it like, all these point out peace of mind.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. We are right out of time, unfortunately, although I'm sure we could all go on for another half hour or so. But thank you very much indeed, Kanan, Jeremy, Jaspal, for joining me. It's been a really, really great discussion, great session. Thoroughly enjoyed it. For the audience, don't forget to connect to these guys on the event platform. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any more questions that you've got. But for now, obviously stay tuned for the next session, which comes up in 5 minutes. And we'll see you shortly. Thank you very much indeed, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.